Genetically, going back to their root, this is the oldest purebred breed of dog that they found. They were buried with the pharaohs and everything like that. So just from day one, they have been hunters and sprinters, and they love to run. So when a dog's been to the racing industry, then they've been extra rewarded for running. You know, it's even more deeply ingrained than just their natural genetic desire to do it.
With regard to what happens to the dogs when they stop racing, there once was a time back in the 80s, or up until the 80s, when the dogs were killed. They were just killed. They would keep some for breeding, and there were much more that were bred back then, and they were disposed of. Nobody knew about them as pets, and late 80s people started figuring out that they actually make fabulous pets, and they're just darling, and they're quite addictive actually. So at that point, rescue groups started popping up, and more over the years have been rescued. As the industry declines, there are fewer bred, so there are fewer coming off the tracks. There have been tracks closing in the last several years, which is all great news for these guys. And because of that, a greater percentage is going into rescue. But there are still dogs who are killed, and there are dogs who are sold to research. But the majority, you know, at this point are coming into rescues and finding home, which is wonderful as word's gotten out that they're not hyper, and they don't need a huge yard and tons of exercise. This is pretty much how they operate right here. So, you know, we're hoping that one of these days that we won't have to be doing this at all, that the industry will cease to exist. But up until then, we're still plugging away, trying to find homes for the little monkeys. And people often think that they're gonna be crazy lunatics because of their race dogs, and it's just not the case. Sometimes they are. Many people who start looking at greyhounds or who come to the meet and greets and have never seen a greyhound before, they are very surprised at how easy these guys are to acclimate to a family and to live with. They are quiet, they are clean, they are polite, they're not always in your face. They're very sensitive to their surroundings, and they try to fit in. They try to do their best to fit in. Greyhounds are very different from other dogs physically. They have very little body fat, so they don't control their temperature real well. They get hot and cold easily. So they are predominantly indoor dogs. They don't spend a lot of time outside, and they should never be allowed off leash unless they're in a fenced area, because they can get too far too fast. And as far as blood work, they are also different. They have a larger heart than other dogs. They are physiologically quite a bit different, and it's all because of how they run. And in the average 30-second race, for instance, they will pump all of the blood through their heart 5 times. They are the only dog with a double suspension gait, where all 4 feet are off the ground when they're extended, and then when their legs are together, their feet are also off the ground. There are no other breeds that do that, really. And it's all about the running fast. They're bred and then raised in the industry to do specifically that, and that's it.
Greyhounds make amazing pets. First of all, they come to you, and they're pretty much usually already potty trained because they're crate trained at the track, so they are easy to manage that way. And they don't do a lot of things that a lot of other dog breeds do. Like, they don't dig that much, they don't bark, they don't do a whole lot of other behavioral issues that you have with other dogs. So you get them, they're pretty much already potty trained, and you just show them where their bed is and take it from there.
In terms of acclimation from track life to home life, it's usually a pretty easy transition, amazingly enough. I mean, we're not talking about a puppy that's coming into a home. We're talking about a dog who's grown up, been raised, and trained to do this very specific thing. And then beyond that, they pretty much live in a vacuum. They live in a little cage. They get out to go to the bathroom a few times a day. They race maybe once or twice a week, and that's it, pretty much. And what we're doing when they come to us, because they are so lazy, you know, people think they're just going to be running around all the time, and they really aren't, because they do spend so much time sedate and not doing anything. They're used to that. So for the most part, that's what they do. They have no stamina. They are very, very short, and it's maybe a little over a quarter of a mile. And that's it. So you might have a dog who rips around in the yard for a little bit, then has to take a 4-hour nap, or you might have a slightly older dog who goes for a 15-minute walk and then has to take a 4-hour nap. You know, it's really because of the lack of consistent energy and prolonged energy. That's what makes them so easy. They're not like a Jack Russell. If you tried to take a Jack Russell and had them race and then sit in a cage the rest of the time, they would go bonkers. But these guys, they do it so good. They do it so good. Yes, I do.
The best training technique for greyhounds is using positive reinforcement. I mean, I believe the best training technique for all dogs is using science and learning theory and educated, humane, positive methods. Some dogs are more biddable than others. For example, a Labrador or a Retriever, they're like, what do you want me to do? I'll do anything you want. Whereas a Greyhound's just gonna stand there and be like, what do you want? So you really have to make sure you use motivation and food and fun, and sometimes let them run for a reward, because any other technique, they're just gonna shut down.
Greyhound racing is controversial because many believe that the greyhounds aren't treated very well. It's a sport that's all about the gambling, and the dogs tend to be a byproduct of the industry. So once they're no longer of use, they need to be disposed of. And some people think that it's okay to race them because they may have an agenda with regard to the gambling, or there are groups, rescue groups, that actually feel like they're afraid to speak out because they feel they won't be able to get dogs if they badmouth the industry. But awareness has creeped into the situation, and a lot of people are now finding out that they aren't well cared for. And some people think, oh, they love to race, so it's okay. All dogs love to run, but that's no reason to keep them in a cage. So they're sort of a mandatory retirement at age 5. They start racing at about 1.5 years old, and they are no longer needed if they become too slow or they become injured. So the majority of them don't actually make it to a retirement age of 5. Generally, the dogs we're seeing coming in we'll get flunkies who are still 1 year, 1.5 years old. We'll get generally 2- and 3-year-old dogs who just weren't quick enough, just weren't interested enough, were playing games on the track and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then we get the injured ones as well. We generally aren't told, unless there's a major injury, we have to sort of look and see, does it look like this dog has some sort of injury or problem? Because we just get the dogs and we don't really know too much about them generally. With regard to getting the greyhounds ready for adoption, for the most part, we're starting out with dogs who are a bit of a blank slate. They have no experience with the outside world. They don't know stairs, they don't know mirrors, they don't know babies, small children sometimes. Some have probably never seen grass. We've had a few that seem a little strange about the grass at first. So our job is to get them acclimated to the world that we are living in, find out about their personalities, get them acclimated to a household situation so they're potty trained and not climbing all over counters and behaving like good citizens. In that process, we get to see their personalities emerge. They get to see their personalities emerge. Oftentimes, they have no idea what their personalities are going to be like. And we'll see some pretty amazing stuff where dog will do something and then look at you like, oh my gosh, look what I just did. Can you believe that? and it'll be something silly, like jumping in the car. And during this time, we're getting all their medical cared for and putting some weight on them. The amount of time it takes for a dog to get adopted varies quite a bit. Some are here for just a few weeks while we're getting medical fixed up, and then others are here for, I think the longest we had a dog was for 1 week shy of 2 years. And he got the most fabulous home, and we get emails from his parents all the time. Sometimes you see a dog, and you have a dog for a while, and they just aren't getting adopted, and they're just not, they seem okay here, and they're doing pretty good here, but all of a sudden, at some point, they kind of click, and then that's when people are wanting them for some reason. It might be a few months down the road, or a year down the road, and then they'll get the home that they've been waiting for, I guess. But it's wonderful to see them completely out of their shells or totally blossom when they get into a new home, because oftentimes we do get to see them at some point afterward, and to see how they are so proud of themselves, and how proud of how they're doing, and how happy their families are, and how their families' lives have changed in addition to the dog's life. The adoption process for these guys entails an application, a home visit. We're looking for yard safety, we're looking for a secure home, a forever home, and someone who understands, maybe has done a little research on the breed and understands their differences. We're, of course, always around for support, any problems, questions. People are welcome to call. But it is nice to know what you're getting into when you adopt a dog. They're not for everybody, but people are generally very surprised at how easy they are. We find a lot of people are like expecting them to be hyper and need huge amounts of exercise in a large yard. And then they come to the meet and greets and they see these slugs laying here, and they wonder if they're sick. They ask us if they're sick often, or what's wrong with them. Why are they all just laying down? Well, they go to the meet and greets, they lay down, they go home, and they're exhausted, right?
Caring for a Greyhound, I personally love about these retired racers. These are working dogs. These are dogs who have been held in really abysmal conditions from birth, from puppyhood. They live in a large communal situation with typically poor quality care, and to have the opportunity to see these dogs come out of that environment and have a chance to live in a loving home. What a gift. That has always struck me as being really a small but important contribution, something significant I could do, and more importantly, what the dogs give back. They're so happy to be in a home at last.
The way they are able to transform people's lives is pretty incredible. I mean, they're dogs, but they're a little different. And we oftentimes have people who were never intending to get a second dog, or a third dog, or a fourth dog come back and get more, because they are so easy and because they are so sort of healing. The energy is very quiet. They I don't know what it is really. They are just, they're kind of special. I'm apparently not the only person who thinks so.
It's been such a joy. My idea of having to take Greyhounds on long walks, I would pick up the leash and he would look at me from the sofa as if to say, have a good time, let me know when you're home, I'll be here, oh, don't wake me if I'm napping. So the adjustment was really easy, surprisingly so from my point of view. Another important thing to me about Greyhounds is that Barbara screens each of them and really understands and knows each individual Greyhound's personality, so that before the Greyhound is placed in a home environment, Barbara has a really good idea about who the Greyhound is going to be most suited to. Whether it's a Greyhound that has a strong prey drive and is going to want to go after cats, or a Greyhound that's much shyer and is going to need a little more coaxing, or to be left alone a little bit more in order to get used to living in a home. Barbara and the Homestretch program, they provide an invaluable service for helping these Greyhounds go from living in an institutional, track-based setting to learning, wow, this is new. I've never walked up steps if I'm a Greyhound. I've never walked up and down steps. I've never ridden in a passenger car. I've never maybe seen a cat. The Greyhounds have this wonderful opportunity to learn and experience all these new things before they go to their forever home.
As a Greyhound owners, you have to be really responsible about your front door, because front doors are like starting gates to them. So they're trained, these are retired racing dogs, so they have been in the slots to race, and so they will kind of generalize that same sprinting behavior right out your front door if you're not watching what you're doing. So you always want to make sure that you have maybe a system where there's an extra fence. You also do some training with your dog on impulse control, teach them to stay at the front door, teach them to do a wait, but you never leave it to chance with a dog that is capable of going 45 miles an hour. So we never just open the front door and nobody's holding the dog, or you train the dog to go to a spot when the doorbell rings.
I love the Greyhounds because they're like big couch potatoes. They are affectionate but not needy. They are lazy but they get bursts of energy. I like to take long walks. And these dogs, I came to find out, they don't need to go jogging. They don't need to go running on the beach. They don't need to go for long, wild, rugged hikes in the mountains. They do love laying on the couch with me and watching TV, or while I'm reading, they're at my side. But it never feels like a clingy type of personality, and that's always been really appealing to me. It's not, in my mind, about how beautiful the dog is, and so many of them are so beautiful. I don't need a dog that matches my furniture, but I want a dog that's going to be with me, that's going to accept love from me, who's going to love me in return, and that is the most important, I think, of all.